This is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 351.
I think the most fundamental success tool for an executive is having a great team. So I think what I would do is I would focus at least 50% of my time on creating, growing and nourishing my team, because they're the ones that are going to get you there.
G'day, this is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 351. And today we continue our best of series with Rob Patterson, Managing Director of Parkins Lane, on humility, relationships and scaling fast. I am your host, Greg Layton, founder of Chiefmaker and the Council of Chiefs. I believe there is a great chief in all of us, and that through listening to the stories, strategies and techniques of great CEOs and gurus, each of you can find and leave your own legacy through your work and life. The Inner Chief Podcast is where you will learn how to think and make moves like a CEO, like a true chief. For over a decade, I've helped CEOs and senior executives around the world boldly lead change, inspire their people, and leave a legacy. On the Inner Chief Podcast, I bring these stories to life with deep diving CEO interviews, interspersed with minisodes covering key leadership challenges, so you will find your own path to greatness as an executive. In this episode, we replay a chat I had with Rob Patterson in 2019. Rob is a CEO and COO with extensive experience in the leadership and scaling of national professional services firms. He's a former COO of HWL Ebsworth, where he played a key role overseeing the metamorphosis of a small Melbourne-based legal practice with 40 employees and turnover of about 3 million into a national commercial law firm of over 600 people and turnover in excess of 150 million. That's 50 times growth. Now Australia's largest firm by partner numbers. Rob then joined Macpherson Kelley as COO and led a similar transformation there, followed by a stint as MD of Rankin Business Lawyers. For the past 2 years, Rob has been GM of FCW Lawyers and has returned to Parkins Lane Consulting Group as Managing Director once again. The firm focuses on creating and executing strategy, growth and marketing for professional services firms. Outside of his work, he's a keen surfer and skier, and he grows his own Sangiovese wines. Today, you're going to hear Rob talk all about how he grew a legal business from 3 million to 150 million, the importance of relationships and being a known quantity when going for roles, humility and self-regulation, and how to grow your personal brand and build an epic track record. Chiefs, without further ado, let's hear from our best of series guest, Rob Patterson. G'day, Rob Patterson. Welcome to the Inner Chief Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend.
Good morning, Greg. Looking forward to it.
Rob, now listen, I've known you for quite a few years now, and you're a magical operator in the corporate world. But what I'd like to understand is where it all began. Tell us a story that sums up your childhood.
Okay, well, probably a story that sums it up quite nicely is that at about the age of 4, I decided I'd had enough of my autocratic parents and duly packed my bags and headed down the street. Unfortunately, I got to the end and I really didn't know what to do from there. So I beat a hasty retreat and asked them for directions, at which point they convinced me that perhaps I should stay.
Any further negotiations at that point, or
maybe I don't recall, but I think what it sums up is, for me, what's a lifelong difficulty with authorities.
That's interesting, considering you've already been in a role of reasonable authority for a long time.
Yeah, I think maybe it comes from a position of if I think somebody makes a really good and genuine point, I'll back them in. But I don't believe in authority for the sake of it. You need to earn it.
You got to earn it, right? Okay, so you're a disobedient child who runs away all the time by the age of 4.
Yes.
What else about your childhood? Tell us a bit about how that shaped you.
Yeah, well, my first job was delivering newspapers in Noble Park in the depths of winter was an interesting exercise. Yeah, I think I learned from that you have to turn up every morning. You know, when the alarm goes off at 4:30, if you don't want to do it, you got to do it. So,
well, there's no paycheck.
No, no paycheck, and my parents are pretty hard workers. So if I didn't get up when the alarm went off, one of them would come and help me get up. Yeah. So I think once Dad actually drove me around the paper round, and he informed me at the time that it was the once and only time.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough too. Fair enough. Help your boy out, but just make sure he knows it's the only one.
Correct.
I love it. But how did your career start then, mate? Like when things really got going, you started off in consulting?
No, I actually, my first couple of roles were in chartered accounting firms. I missed the campus interviews because I was away surfing with some mates. Didn't quite realise how important they are. So my first serious role was at Deloitte in insolvency. It was an amazing role. It was in the halcyon days of insolvency. It was flat out. I got to run some pretty serious businesses, you know, in mid to late 20s. There was an export abattoir, a hardwood timber mill. And the really exciting thing was, I suppose it ignited my passion for getting into an organisation and working out what makes it tick. You know, what are the key metrics? What are the key things you need to look for? And it was just a great grounding in getting a sense of, that all businesses are different, but also there's probably 3 or 4 fundamentals that drive most businesses, and you really need to be across them, and in insolvency, across them very quickly.
Tell us about that. What are those 3 or 4 things, Rob?
Well,
let's dive right into this.
Absolute classic. Timber mill. So a hardwood timber mill, one of the key metrics was actually meeting the truck at the gate and making sure that what they said was an A-grade log was an A-grade log. And, you know, I had no idea what an A-grade log looked like, but learned pretty quickly, because the difference between an A-grade log and a D-grade log is, you know, might have just on one log might have been $10,000. So,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a key metric. Another metric, you know, for a timber mill was just the recovery. So you had a log. What sort of recoveries did you get from that? I think that's probably a learning for most people who have a real financial bent, is that very often finance lags so far behind on some key metrics. You know, if you were waiting in a timber mill to get the monthly financials to work out how you were going, you're a month behind the game.
You're a month behind the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that they're not important, and hopefully they confirm what you think how you're going. But so key metrics. So for, a timber mill, it was A-grade logs, it was recovery on the logs. In a abattoir, it was number of head killed per day. You know.
Yeah, sure. I suppose the lesson here is know your business. Like you have to know the levers that you can pull that are actually going to get you better returns on everything you do.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So and if you're in an organisation, it's really incumbent upon you to know what they are, no matter where you are in the organisation, and how you can contribute to those.
I've got a gut feel question for you. How many people that you come across in business do you think actually are across those numbers?
10%, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, we all get lost in our day-to-day. You know, even I'm guilty of that on occasions. You get lost in the day-to-day, but sometimes you've just got to lift yourself above it and go, okay, what are the key things we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And where are we at with them?
What drives our business? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because in the end, as you say, like what we're talking about here is things like lead metrics that give you your scoreboard.
Correct.
And what's the one number in business that's on the scoreboard? How do you know if you've won or lost?
Yeah.
It's profit, basically. That's it.
That's right.
And if you don't have that, then what have you got? Right. And it might not be the same in the not-for-profit sector, I get that, but if you don't have the numbers, you can forget being a not-for-profit, you'll be gone.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, what drives the profit? Yeah, well, it's pretty fundamental. And understanding, the lead indicators is important.
Okay, so what else is an important thing? You've had this long career now, and let's talk about an example. Like you spent a lot of years at this law firm turning it around and growing it. HWL. Sorry.
Yeah.
Too many letters to remember.
Yeah.
And the journey was from about 3 million to 150 million.
Yes.
Tell us about that journey and what it required for you as someone who was, on the leadership team of that, what happened and what were the key things you did to drive that growth?
Yeah, I think there's some absolute fundamentals. The first one was, I think I was a bit of a vision skeptic before I joined HWL. Maybe because I'd seen a lot of consultants, contrive wordy and lengthy vision statements and, that no one could remember, or, they hung them up on the wall and no one ever really subscribed to. But what I think I learnt at HWL is that if you nail it and it's very succinct and you believe in it, then that can drive everything, and if you don't know what you're looking for in business, it's sometimes you miss great opportunities. But if you're really tightly honed on what it is you're trying to achieve, then you do see opportunities everywhere. So at HWL, we resolved that we were simply going to become a commercial law firm. Up until that point in time, the firm had been doing everything. It had been doing council prosecutions, it had been doing family law, it had been doing a bit of everything and nothing particularly well. And so the first turning point was just to decide what it was we were going to do, which was to be a commercial law firm.
So no identity crisis, right? You know exactly who you're going to be. And I like the word where you said succinct in vision. And I think what the point is very, very important. There's a guy that I follow called Cameron Herald, and he runs a COO Alliance in the States, and he talks about having a vivid vision.
I like
it's not just about pictures. He talks a lot about the words. Describe in detail the words of what it's going to be like in your business, the kind of work you're going to do, the service levels, the culture of the team, the kind of tools and metrics and systems you're going to run in order to get that. It creates a picture, but also in people's mind, there's no doubt about what you're going to do.
Exactly. It's a narrative.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for us, having decided that, what it meant was that we'd started to attract people who had a similar vision. And it's a powerful thing when you can say to somebody what it is you're trying to achieve, they subscribe to it, join, and it is what you say it is. And then for us, that was locally, so we were based in Melbourne. Pretty quickly, it became apparent that a lot of our clients would like us to be interstate, and so that drove a search for a firm interstate, and we went to New South Wales and Sydney and Brisbane, and then we found a firm that was a really good fit in Sydney. It was only a small firm, but it created our beachhead, and so we went from then being a commercial law firm to a national commercial law firm, and then that became our narrative, and then that drove other people to join us. So it started to build on it, and then that leads to decisions around, okay, well, how are we going to support this firm? Are we going to have a shared services team in every state, or are we going to have it centralised? What sort of IT do we need to support this organisation? So it starts to drive a lot of decisions that we made on the way. Decided to centralise the shared services and management, which was, I think, a really good decision against a backdrop when a lot of people were doing it the other way and having a shared services capability in each state and maybe having a lot of overlap and duplication. So things like that helped drive what we wanted to do.
What about the leadership team, Rob? What did you and the other leaders have to learn about yourselves in that period?
Okay, it's interesting. One of my great learnings, I think, and one of my great mentors was the managing partner, Juan Martinez. Juan and I came together. He had just become managing partner when I joined HWL. Together, I suppose, early on, we were the leadership team, although it grew and was expanded, and we added some really good partners on the journey. But yeah, it was great working with him, and perhaps we helped support each other along the way. And I learned some of the really important things I learned from Juan included, if you've got a serious or a tough meeting to have, you call it right up front. When the person walks in the room, sits down, you don't try and have clever repartee or make some jokes. You say, this is a serious meeting. These are the things we need to discuss.
Right.
And that really helped me. I think perhaps through my career to that point, I'd had some pretty tough discussions, but I might have tried to make some light discussion at the start, but it works so more effectively because everyone in the room knows what's going on. The other thing you told me was that if two people are having an argument, get them both in the room with you. Don't deal with them separately.
Sure, yeah.
Which was an interesting learning. Again, it's amazing how people's version of events changes when the person they're talking about is sitting opposite them.
Yeah, isn't that true? Right.
Which doesn't, I think in professional services firms in particular are really, they often avoid those tough discussions. So maybe that's what I'm saying. What I learned from mine is that if it's a tough discussion, call it and have it.
Have it as quick as possible.
Yeah, and move on. Avoid lobbying, avoid politicking, and just get on with it. So he was a great mentor for those things. He was a passionate guy too. It was easy to get wrapped up in the passion of it because he was really passionate about the business and its success. So that rubbed off on me and the whole leadership team.
Chief, one of the biggest challenges in all leadership roles is how to influence stakeholders. The difficult, the easy, the elusive, all sorts of stakeholders, board members, executive teams, clients, suppliers, the media, the community. And if you want the definitive guide on how to think about it, how to set yourself up and prepare for it, how to run through and map your stakeholders, and how to finally influence with integrity, go to chiefmaker.com/stakeholder for a fully editable PDF guide on mastering stakeholder influence. That's chiefmaker.com/stakeholder. Speaking of tough conversations, one of my favourite questions, Rob, is have you ever been given really hard feedback, some stinging feedback? And the reason that it was stinging was because you knew what was being said was true. You ever been in that situation?
I definitely have. I think probably the toughest feedback I ever had was my partner at Deloitte, Mike Wansley. I decided that I was going to leave insolvency. I was a director at Deloitte and I was on the path to partnership, but it became clear in my mind that insolvency wasn't the right place for me. I sat down with Mike and I explained that to him, and so he turned to me and he said, "So you just don't have the stomach for it?" Geez, that hurt. Because I've never thought myself as someone lacking in courage. But when I went away and I reflected on it, I don't think he was so much questioning my courage and I think something we should all question is, am I really well suited to the role? I think when I reflected on it, he was right. And it was the reason that I was leaving insolvency was because I wasn't suited to it. I love building things, having a vision, but insolvency is actually the reverse. It's about dismantling things, realising their value, and very often, making hundreds of people redundant, which I could do, but I didn't really enjoy. So that was really tough. It was a bit of a pill to swallow. But, I think, as I said, I don't think he was actually saying you lack courage, but he was confirming what I knew, that I wasn't suited to the role. Yeah.
It's sometimes when people say that to you, when it's just so sharply put, and maybe you've been dancing around that in your head a little bit, that's why you know it's so true and so accurate, and it can really, as you say, it's like a knife in your heart sometimes. Yeah. But that can be the best medicine. Yeah. A couple of days later, you come out going, "Okay, this is right for me," or "This is the new me."
Yeah,
because you're clear about who you really are, and
maybe take that time to reflect. I think that's something we often don't do. Once you're a really good book on transitions and making sure that you actually complete the circle, and I think that's part of it, is reflecting on that sort of criticism instead of just repressing it or moving on without resolving it in your own mind.
Okay, so that's a bit of a toughie you had to put up with. Tell us now, what about your superpowers, Rob? Like, you've got an incredible track record of something we talk a lot about at Chiefmaker. What's your superpower that drives the success in your career?
The answer might have been different depending on when you asked me, but I think now, reflecting back, and someone said this to me the other day, is I think I've got two. Can you have two?
Superman's got heaps.
That's right.
X-ray vision and he can fly.
Well, the first is relationships. I really enjoy having strong and intimate relationships with people. Throughout my career, the management team that has worked underneath me, I've had a great relationship with. Not a relationship where you can't have tough conversations, you've got to do that, but maybe that's part of relationships. If you have respect and trust, you've got the space to have those conversations. But I love people, I love relationships. I actually love seeing people succeed. I can't remember there was a poet that once said, every time I see someone succeed, a little part of me dies. I'm the reverse of that. I actually like seeing people succeed and doing really well. So I get off on that. So I think, the ability to have relationships and long-lasting and deep relationships is a superpower. And perhaps the other one at a more technical level, something I really enjoy doing is integrating things. And so at HWL, when we were merging with firms, one of the things I really enjoyed doing was it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. How do we integrate this new organisation that's joined us into the current one? What does that look like? How do you do it? What do you do before they even join? One of my key learnings was make all the tough calls before they merge. So if there's some people who aren't going to make the journey across, do it before you merge, because the last thing you want to be doing in a newly formed organisation is in culling people, because it sends totally the wrong message.
Sure. Okay, so you've got superpowers coming out your ears. What about moments of doubt?
Yeah, I think we all have those. Probably my most significant moment of doubt was when I first moved into law. Within a couple of months, I vividly remember sitting up at level 44 in the Nauru House thinking, what the hell have I done? I had imagined that law was very similar to accounting firms, and was run along very similar lines, and it's not. It's a professional services firm, so maybe some of the fundamentals are the same, but it was a very different environment. Yeah, and I doubted whether I'd made the right choice. So that was it was quite interesting.
How do you get through those moments, though, Rob? I mean, you fought on and it ended up being the right choice. How do you get through those moments?
It's a saying that I often use with my team is I try to find what my true north is. What is it I'm trying to achieve? And in that example, what was it I was trying to do with that law firm? And then just for a while, put your head down, put one foot in front of the other, and then look up after a while, and it's amazing how far you've progressed. I think if you spend too much time worrying about the outcome and not about the process, then you just create anxiety, lack of focus. So work out where you're going, and then put your head down and march towards it, and then look up at appropriate junctures. Yeah,
and you might not always have been walking in the exact right direction, but at least you're making some moves, and you've got momentum. I think one of the worst things with confidence and knowing what to do is stalling and then doing nothing.
Yeah, inertia's a disaster, when you're stuck on the spot. That's right. I think even if you make a step and it's the wrong one, you learn from it, you get feedback.
Yeah.
But if you stay where you are and keep on trying to do the same thing, it's not going to serve you well.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the goals, is just have a good strike rate in decision making. If you make 7 or 8 out of 10 good decisions, hey, you're doing pretty damn well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because I think most people, a lot of people who really battle in business more strike rate at about 200 or 300 rather than 7 or 8. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is just do something and move and learn and ask people, and that will hold you in good stead in the longer term.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be afraid of making mistakes.
So, Rob, what advice would you give to someone who is stuck in their career? They're not sure of the next move. They're maybe stalled in their growth. What do they do?
What I would suggest is I'd start with a bit of fact-finding. So, okay, I'm stalled. I'm not going anywhere. Best person to ask, assuming you've got a reasonable relationship with your boss. Where am I at? What do I need to do more of? If you don't have a good relationship, maybe your boss's boss.
Yeah, agreed. Well, look, I know I'm a very big believer that if you're a professional services firm of one, which is what most people really are, and you sell your services full time to the company you work for, therefore your customer is who? Your boss is your number one customer. So that's the first person to ask, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Yeah, and hopefully your boss has got the confidence to give you honest feedback. And maybe it's up to you to create that environment.
I think you've got to own it. Right? Otherwise, if you're not getting feedback about your career and not sure why you're not going anywhere, then there's something wrong.
Absolutely. So that's where I'd start, and then maybe a bit of self-reflection as well. As I found with insolvency, it wasn't right for me. Maybe if you're stalled, part of the journey is to ask whether you're really enjoying what you're doing and whether it's suited to your strengths. And if it is, great. But if it isn't, maybe you do need to think about where next.
Yeah, the right role is so important, absolutely vitally important. Okay, what drives you at a deeper level to succeed?
Yeah, look, one of my drivers, and I think it's fair to say this isn't symptomatic of my whole life. I'm less than perfect in most of my aspects of my life. But I think in work and with business, I hate doing a half-assed job. In fact, I won't do a half-assed job. If that's what it's going to be, I won't do it. I'll move on. So I think what's always driven me is just how do I do what I'm doing at an amazing level? What do I need to do to really, really succeed in this role and set about doing it. I think that's what drives me. Yeah, absolutely. And at some level, that's definitely perfection. I like to do things really well. But yeah, and I think it's probably the way I went about my sport as well. But it's certainly not how I go about my gardening. And the dead plants are a testimony to that.
You can't be good at everything, Rob.
No.
Even Superman had his kryptonite. So, okay, let's talk about your rhythm and your routine. You're a very, very keen surfer.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's a wonderful process or thing you do to stay focused. What else do you do to stay focused?
Yeah, what I do, and I'm sure I read again, someone had spoken about this. My daily routine is when I sit down to do some work, I just clean up the work area. I'm not filing but I'm just cleaning it up, and it's like uncluttering my mind in a way. So just making sure that it's nice and clean and I'm ready to go. On a weekly basis, what I like to do is I get my Outlook calendar, and I also have a manual or a paper diary. I put my Outlook calendar into my paper diary, then I overlay my exercises for the week, what I'm planning to do, my family and friends who I'm catching up with, what I'm going to do, what I'm planning to do, other bits and bobs, personal things, because then I can sit back and go, that's not doable. Something's got to give. How can I rearrange it? I think too often people's personal lives and work lives and family lives all collide, and they just seem to be in a state of chaos. For me, it's a way of creating a bit of order, at least on Sunday. By Wednesday, it might be a disaster, but on Sunday, it's looking pretty good.
You feel good about Monday morning, right?
Exactly right.
So you do this on a Sunday?
Yeah, do it on a Sunday afternoon, probably with a red wine.
Nice.
And just... Yeah. And it just gives me line of sight. And it's amazing the sort of things it'll sometimes throw up. The other thing that I do as part of that process is I'll then identify what the 3 or 4 big priorities are for the week.
Yep.
What do I have to do this week? And I'll always go back to those daily. And it's amazing when you do that, you'll get to the end of the week and you may not have achieved everything you wanted to, but you've nailed the top 2 or 3 things.
It's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's almost sort of magical. It sounds a bit strange, but it's if you keep on going back to it daily, you just do them because you can't escape it,
Okay, what about when... So you've got your calendar and you're into the week. How do you say no? Because one of the real challenges in the world is people dumping new initiatives, projects, ideas, even asking you for a report that all of a sudden takes you another 3 hours to develop. Yeah. How do you say no to that?
It's been a bit easier the more senior you get. but certainly as I was going through my career, I think what I would often do is if a person was wanting to... if someone, a more senior person, was wanting me to do a major piece of work, I'd ask them what they wanted me to stop doing. And I'd say, these are my priorities. Which of these do you want me to park while I deal with this other thing? And it's quite interesting, then forces them to go, gosh, is this as big a priority as that?
Sure.
So, I
think it's a powerful move is when you give someone else the opportunity to decide which... You prioritise the amount of work.
That's right. These are the 3 or 4 things I've got. Yeah. Which one you want me to park? So that's and then I suppose now, as I said, when you become a bit more senior, it becomes a bit easier. But it's still sometimes hard to say no. But you just have to, don't you?
Yeah, you do. You've got to be. Well, I say you've got to be the chief of your own calendar. Yeah. And your own schedule. And if you're not, someone else is.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than that.
That's right. Correct.
Okay, let's talk about your mentors, coaches, consultants, whoever you've called upon throughout your career. Have you had any important people like that you've
I've been very lucky. Probably the first mentor, and he's now one of my major surfing buddies, Paul Devine at Deloitte. When I started at Deloitte, pretty soon was working for Paul, and he was a manager at Deloitte at the time. What I was so lucky about was that he took me to everything. He took me to all the meetings, he took me to the BD functions with the bankers, warts and all. And he probably threw me a little bit in the deep end, but I just got such a good view of how the business was run and what it was and how to go about it. Not everyone's that lucky. Sometimes they'll work for someone who micromanages, and Paul was the anti-micromanager. He would give you a few really broad bullet points and come back to me when you've dealt with these.
Sure, yeah.
Which was at times made it, it was challenging, but it was just great to have someone who was really happy and comfortable with me understanding their role.
Yeah.
A lot of bosses struggle with that because, they're worried about, maybe you're taking their role. Paul was, very generous. So he was a brilliant mentor. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Juan Martinez was tremendous as well. Working closely with Juan, I learnt a lot about a lot of things that are tough in management. I think that's what he does particularly well, is that he's prepared to make hard calls. He's prepared to not be the nice guy all the time. So I learnt that was an important part of leadership. It's never gratuitous, it's never vindictive, but it's just honest. Even down to when you have to let someone go, his position was that you're doing them a disfavour every minute that you leave them in your organisation because they could be being hugely successful somewhere else.
It's a magical frame, isn't it? Because isn't it the opposite of what we normally think?
Correct.
I think the other thing is you've got to be thinking longer term. If all you're thinking about is the pain of the meeting, not that you're freeing them, that you're freeing all the people who are also probably working with them and around them who are also probably suffering a little bit.
Yeah.
Plus the amount of strain on yourself, plus customers. Often when someone gets in a really bad place, there's a lot of people, not just them and you, that are suffering.
Yeah, that's really true. That's true. Yeah, and it's probably incumbent upon you to make the call sooner rather than later as a result.
Yeah. What about groups, networks? Have you ever been a part of anything like that?
Look, I've never been part of a formal network, but I think part of, as I was saying earlier on, with a focus on relationships, I've got a lot of informal groups that I'm a member of, and a lot of them are places that I've worked. So Deloitte, I've got a network of people I worked with at Deloitte. HWL Ebsworth, I've got a network of people who I still see regularly who are at HWL. And probably goes back to uni. Some of my nearest and dearest friends are people that I went to uni with and are a really good source of feedback.
Yeah, sure.
Good, bad, and indifferent. Yeah, so I've got a lot of networks, informal networks, definitely, and they overlap in some spaces. It's not just professional services, but a fundamental of professional services is that you have to have a really good personal network. Sure. If you're going to succeed and grow your business, whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, engineer, whatever, 80 to 90% of all your new work will come from your network.
Yeah, exactly. And let's apply that lens. If we say that every person, if you're working full-time, no matter where you are, that you're a professional services firm of one.
Yes.
80-90% of roles are going to come from your existing network.
Absolutely. The only job I've ever applied for was my first one.
There you go. Yeah.
That was, and so as a consequence, when people ever ask me for my CV, I don't really have one.
Well, it's an interesting question. People say to me, like, well, how do you get a C-level role? And I said, okay, what's your dream role? I said, well, it's COO of this or CEO of this, and maybe there are one or two roles from it. I say, I want you to picture who would be on the panel for that interview.
Yeah.
What kind of relationship do you have with them? And more often than not, I get no relationship with them. And I say, if you think you're going to get on the executive team of a major company or a decent-sized company as a completely unknown quantity, you're probably kidding yourself.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
There's a low chance of that. You have to build that network now to massively increase your chances later. If you're a known quantity, you're a safe bet, you are way more likely to nail that role.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Interesting, isn't it? If you were pitching for work from that company, the first thing you do is get to know everybody on the panel, whereas when you're thinking of that position within that company, you don't think that way.
That's right.
Sort of
you
curious.
They're going to go, well, we'll just pick Bob or Jane and they'll be wonderful. But if they don't know Bob and they don't know Jane, you're severely disadvantaged compared to the person that is a known quantity.
Oh, absolutely. If you've got someone on that panel sponsoring you, it's such a leg up.
Exactly. You're basically home and hose.
Yes, you are.
And I've been on a few panels and I think almost all of them were someone who was a known quantity got the job.
That's right.
Okay, what about your skills and your assets that you bring to the table? How do you keep learning now?
I think once you stop learning, you die. But
you're certainly dead in the water from a career perspective, right?
Yeah. No, I there's a few things that I do, and probably a few friends of mine that if they hear this, they'll roll their eyes. But Harvard Business Review, I read religiously.
Roll eyes. Sorry.
He did. But there's so many new ideas that come through every month in the Harvard Business Review that I challenge anybody to not read it and go, why aren't we doing that? So I find that really insightful. My Twitter feed, I haven't got Warnie on my Twitter feed. I haven't got any Kardashians, but I've got...
Oh, geez, you're missing out. How can you be learning?
That's right. But I've got the London Business School.
Yeah.
I've got Stanford. I've got BBC. I've got the ABC. So I use my Twitter feed to keep me up to date with what's going on in the world and what some of the major learning institutions are doing.
Who was the last person you trolled?
No one.
No. I think you were about me the other day. No.
That's right.
Chiefs, more from Rob in a minute. Now, recently I spoke to Mike Smith, founder and CEO of XeroCo. We spoke about how to build a tribe of loyal customers, creating a better world through business and personal growth. Here's what Mike had to say about what inspired him to take action.
It was during that trip that I really started to see how pervasive the global waste problem is. And it was really confronting because we were literally in some of the most remote places you could possibly get to. There were times when we would be walking for 2 weeks without seeing another human up in the Himalayan mountains. And you'd get to the head of a valley and there'd be a beautiful turquoise lake, 3,500 meters above sea level, no sign of humanity, and it would be full of rubbish. And you just think, how the hell has this plastic even gotten here?
You can listen to that brilliant conversation with Mike by going to chiefmaker.com/350. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the podcast and check out all the other great interviews with our chiefs and gurus, as well as all the mini-sodes by going to chiefmaker.com/listen now. Righto, Chief, let's get back to our best of series with Rob Patterson. What are the most important skills that leaders should learn but don't?
Okay, and this doesn't apply to all. I think the leaders that I struggle with most are the ones who have no humility. I think the best leaders have humility. They have self-confidence, but they have humility. And I think the leaders that don't appeal to me at all are the ones that have an absence of humility.
How do you learn that?
Maybe it's the school of hard knocks. I don't know. I think overconfidence might be as a result of perhaps never losing. I don't know. But
yeah, well, maybe. Or what I've actually found is, and I was only chatting to the head of HR of a major organisation this morning about this, is a lot of very successful people, for some reason, they're able to unconsciously delete any responsibility for failure of the organisations they work for. So even if they've had a role where they've failed, they will convince themselves it wasn't their fault and that they were the superhero. Turn up to the next job, ready to go. Right? As if nothing ever went wrong. I mean, have you come across this?
I think I have. Yeah, there's a few people in the legal industry who have jumped from organisation to organisation along those lines.
Convinced they're the saviour. And I think in many ways have completely convinced themselves to the level they believe it, that everything's okay. They did everything they could. It wasn't their fault.
So it's interesting. I like that. So it's an absence of self-reflection.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is pretty, well, maybe, perhaps that's another leadership trait that's really important. The ability to self-reflect.
For sure. And self-regulate, right?
Oh, so I like that. I wish I'd thought of that myself.
You can borrow it.
Well, I remember once a partner in an accounting firm asking me if it was okay to throw the phone against the wall. And I said, mate, you're kidding me, aren't you? And he said, oh, but when you get really angry, and I said, well, yeah, if you have the inability to self-regulate, don't be surprised when none of your staff actually have an honest conversation with you.
Yes, exactly, right, yeah. What phone, the yellow pages or...
No, it was the phone handset I think he threw against the...
Oh, wow. Oh, did you say, you should have said yes and then went, oh, no.
Too late.
That would be something worth seeing, is a telephone going flying across the office. Okay, what's the number one book you recommend for professionals?
The number one book I recommend is Built to Last.
Oh, yeah.
It's the precursor to Good to Great, but I think it's better.
Yeah, Jim Collins.
I read that in one rain-delayed session of an ASHES test at the MCG.
Yeah, there you go.
And I just consumed it. I couldn't... I think it, like sometimes books come at the right time. And for me, obviously it was quite a long rain delay.
Yes. Yep.
I think it was the first two sessions, but I just couldn't put it down. And I read it. It gave me a really good framework to work through strategy with, and a lot of books that have lent heavily from it. Simon Sinek, it starts with why. I think if you read Built to Last, you may not have absolutely drawn that from it, but it's a critical part of it. You know, and there's a lot of books like Simon Sinek. I really enjoy that as well. But yeah, Built to Last is the one that often, particularly younger members of management, if they're looking where to start, it's a really good place to start.
No, it's a cracker. Absolutely. We'll put the link for that in the show notes so people can get to it. What was the most difficult decision you've had to make in your career and why?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I remember vividly. The hardest decision I ever had to make was to make a CFO of mine redundant. And it came about because we were merging with another firm who had a really quite amazing CFO on the other side. And it was going to be a detriment to the merged entity just to go forward with my whole team. I did go forward with the rest of my team, but this one role in particular. And this person was a really good friend of mine, and it's the worst discussion I've ever had. It was tough. He didn't see it coming. Yeah, and it doesn't haunt me because it was the right call, but geez, my stomach tenses when I think about it.
Yeah, wow. That is a tough moment. Okay, then. What was the best decision you ever made?
Best decision I ever made?
Or the smartest strategic move you ever made?
Yeah, I think some of the learnings that I had at HWL, I'd have amongst those. One of them being, integrating another large organisation and just how it enables you to strip out a whole lot of costs and have a really profitable, much more profitable organisation. So probably the best decision is don't just bolt two things together and hope it works, but absolutely think strategically about who's on board post and what it's going to look like in the shape of it. I think those are some of the better decisions that I made, was looking at, okay, how's this going to look afterwards and what do we need to do?
What about internal mindsets and mantras? Do you have any little phrases, mantras or mindsets that you use to keep going every day? I mean, the corporate world's not easy. How do you stay on top of it all?
Well, I do. And again, people that I know that hear this will roll their eyes. But one of my favourites is it's not the end of the world. And my daughter in particular she'll be totally rolling her eyes when she hears that. Because I vividly remember her as a child saying it, but it is the end of the world. But yeah, for me, when things, things often go wrong or don't go according to plan, and I think we personalise them too much. And you need to just go, look, this is not the end of the world. No one's dying. It's not an absolute disaster. You only have to look at Christchurch this week. That's the end of the world. Yeah. Making a poor call or making a mistake, is not the end of the world. Yeah. Reflect and learn from it. So, I think that's probably my favourite mantra that I often have. And probably my other one is go team.
Go team.
I think it's all about team. That's always been my focus. I haven't made brilliant decisions in my career. My team has. And, I haven't done brilliant things. My team has. So it's all about team.
Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure. Let's get into the final half a dozen questions that all chiefs are subjected to.
Okay.
All right, let's go from the top. What is the next thing in your life you're most excited about?
Ooh, apart from the surf this afternoon. No, I'm really excited because I've gone back into full-time consulting and I know it's the right decision because I just feel so good about it and I'm really enjoying working with an array of entities. It's been great to work with a specific entity for periods of time, and maybe that's part of the learning again, learning what different organisations are doing. Yeah, so for me, the thing that I'm really looking forward to is my consulting practice, Parkins Lane, absolutely smashing it.
How do people find out about Parkins Lane? Eh?
Well, in a number of ways. I'm on Twitter, so it's at Parkins Lane.
Okay, yep.
Or if they want to contact me direct, it's robert.patterson@parkinslane.com.au.
We'll put that on the show notes too so people can connect with you directly.
Yeah, give me a yell.
What is Parkins Lane going to specialise in?
Predominantly strategy, marketing, and integrating mergers and acquisitions. So in terms of strategy, as I indicated a bit earlier on, I'm not a fan of long-winded vision, mission statements, blah, blah, blah. Let's get down to the core of what you're trying to achieve as an organisation, nail that, look at the key things that will help you achieve that.
Fantastic. Great. What are you most grateful for in life?
Apart from being alive, I think it's...
And the surf this afternoon?
Yeah.
What, other than those two things?
I think my daughter Ab, she's just started work. So, yeah, I'm grateful for her. She's just wonderful.
Wonderful. Can you nominate another CEO or a CEO that you think, or you hold with great respect, you think should be on the Inner Chief?
And you primed me for this earlier, and I've got a bit of a left field suggestion. There's a fellow called Theo Cottiadis, who is the managing director of a beverages firm, Red Eye International. Theo, hugely successful, very unique, very innovative fellow, but he's achieved his success largely through outsourcing a number of the factors of his organisation. So he's been clever enough to realise you don't have to do everything yourself, and he's been very, very adept at outsourcing those things that he didn't need to do, and still growing a tremendous business.
Wow, he'd be great. Let's try and track down Theo. Yep. Okay, now if you could lead any company in the world, and it's not allowed to be the one your own one or anyone you've worked with previously, which company would you take the reins of?
Oh, I know this answer, absolutely. I'd love to run Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen and Katz. As I know it's a mouthful, they're a New York-based law firm. They're only in New York. They only have about 100 lawyers, I think, and they're the most profitable law firm per partner in the world.
Wow. Yep.
And they're amazing.
Okay. Do they know you're looking for a job? Right.
No, they don't, but hopefully they'll hear the podcast.
I won't miss it. No one misses it. It's okay. What is your final message of wisdom and hope you think is vital for the next generation?
Well, as I said a little bit earlier, I think the most fundamental success tool for an executive is having a great team. So I think what I would do is I would focus at least 50% of my time on creating, growing and nourishing my team, because they're the ones that are going to get you there.
Superb. Rob Patterson, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you for coming on the Inner Chief.
You're very welcome, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Chief, that sums it up for this week. The remarkable Rob Patterson, a true gentleman, a great chief and a great friend of ours here at Chiefmaker. He has just shown time and again his personal and professional mastery by leading major transformation and scaling, oh my gosh, on an incredible level. All the links and resources for this episode can be found at chiefmaker.com/351. And if you would like to stay in touch and hear all about some of the best resources you can find anywhere in the world to improve your performance at work, go to chiefmaker.com/subscribe. Now, Chief, if you're yet to rate the episode and subscribe, I hope you'll do so soon. It helps others see the magnificent value that the chiefs and gurus bring to their life and career. So make sure you hit subscribe on your podcast app now, give it a 5-star rating if you think it's worthy, and leave a short review about your favourite episode. Righto, Chiefs, as always, remember to stay epic.